We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Any agenda additions that anybody has? Seeing none from the board, any from administration? Okay, I'll get a motion. Mr. Stolberg.
I'll move the agenda as presented.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Minute approval from October 26th. Any questions, concerns, errors, or omissions? Mr. Clark?
I'll move the minutes.
Okay. Everybody's good with that? All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, we'll do a quick round of introductions right now. Marlene Hanson, we'll start.
Attorney Gender, board member.
Paul McKay, board member.
Larry Clark, board member.
Dave Grover, board member. Justin Stevens, board member.
Wes Stuhlberg, board member.
James Nyberg, board member and chair.
Craig Teal, Director of Planning and Development.
Andrew Burchick, Director of Municipal Services.
Rich Fitzgerald, development officer.
McCulloch, Director of Operations.
In the back corner,
Lakota Anderson.
okay, thank you and welcome. And on the line we have somebody.
Dennis, did you want to unmute and introduce yourself? Oh, can't hear you just yet. There we go.
There we go.
Go ahead.
My name's Dennis Twerdoff. I'm a sand and gravel consultant. I'm just listening in for Brian McNabb,
Perfect.
NAB Construction.
Welcome, Dennis, and welcome everybody. Okay.
Thank you.
Business arising from the minutes. Was there anything that we need to discuss? Nothing from you, Craig? Any from the board? Nothing? Okay. We'll go into reports. 5.1 officers report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The report format looks a little thin. That's probably more of the transition from one director to the next, more so than the accurate depiction of the workload in the department. In the materials attached, you can see approximately 15 development permits that started up or what are underway from the last MPC meeting going into November. And of course, not reflected on that are any ongoing follow-ups or other permits that are in place. On the subdivision front, as of the time of providing summary, we had 12 applications for the current year. 13th has arrived, a little bit down from last year, but compared to an average of 20. And that is the extent of my report, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Any questions? I'm not seeing any. Can I get someone to move the report? Mr. Gender moves the report. All those in favor? That is carried. Short and sweet, the way we like it. Development permits. We'll go on to 6.1. Who's taking this?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. That will be me.
Okay.
And this particular application, the applicants are present, one via Zoom, Dennis Twerdoff, who's helping Brian McNabb, who is the applicant for this particular location. So it is a gravel pit that's north of Highway 61, kind of over towards the east end of the county, just on a quarter section or half section straddling Big Knife Creek. And you can see that on the exhibits that are attached to the RFD materials, which I think is page 22, Andrew, if you're trying to jump down to that.
Page 22?
Yes, I believe gives us our, there we go, a good exhibit of the development area that we're looking at, Big Knife Creek going across the north, and then on the key map to the right-hand side, you can get a sense of the location we're talking about. So tucked in out of the way, close to the Battle River River Valley. The application, what you see on the air photo is the tanned area where the 2 in the circle is the development activity that occurred under a 2013 development permit. The area was excavated, crushed, the stockpile is present, and then at least one haul occurred from that. And that permit had a 5-year time frame, expired in 2018. And the applicant has recently come forward with a new development permit to basically make sure they're ready to go if and when they're able to find a customer to take the gravel off their hands. The overall amount of gravel in this particular area in that yellow box that you can see was originally estimated to be 150,000 tons of gravel. The applicant has had a chance to revisit or revise that and now estimates it's more like 50,000. tons of gravel in the area that's on this side of Big Knife Creek, close to the road network. On the area north of Big Knife Creek, there's probably more of that $150,000 of the vast majority. It's just harder to get to over the creek, river valley and the creek itself. So they've dropped their estimates of how much volume would come out of this particular area. It is quite remote, and that's beneficial in one sense in terms of issues of noise and dust and disturbance with the neighbors. There's no residences within about a mile's distance. It's mostly pasture land or crown land or undeveloped land around them. Not a lot of houses. So it brings a bit of a blessing in that respect. On the flip side, which I'm going to spend a lot more time talking about, is the issue of road access. So most of the haul route to get gravel out of this area is actually pretty well developed. It's developed portions of Township Road 41-0, and then down Range Road 17-2, and then you reach Highway 601. On that haul route, there'll be two houses that get passed along the way. So from their typical approach to use of those roads when a large haul begins, or even a small haul, our usual haul route agreements will work. That means having a separate agreement for anything that's 5 and less trucks coming and going in a given day, and any large hauls for, say, a big project of 20,000 tons moving offsite at once would require a separate haul route agreement. That is the good part of the haul route. The more questionable part of the haul route is the last mile and a half that goes to the east of 17-1 and the undeveloped portion of Township Road 41-0. Thanks very much, Ken, for bringing that up. So you can see graphically the exhibit shows a last little kind of hockey stick L shape at the very end in the blue cyan on that drawing. And all the way over to, Range Road 17-0 is where the undeveloped portion transitions to a developed portion going to the west. In the RFD, you'll see some pictures of that undeveloped road, and it's pretty much a dirt track, a little bit of gravel that a pickup truck can easily negotiate. But under the weight of strong gravel trucks or heavy equipment or too much intensity of volume of traffic, this road won't stand long. So administration's initial reaction to this was, should we look at building a road? And we've stepped back from that, saying, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of volume here. Could we instead manage it using a modified form of a haul route agreement, and therefore avoid having to build a more road network for the county to maintain for what essence after the 50,000 tons of gravel that's moved off the site becomes pasture land again. So we have put together a recommendation for MPC's consideration that looks at using the typical haul route arrangements for the developed portions. And for the undeveloped section, we're talking about the restrictions would begin with anything heavier than a 1-ton vehicle. So if you're going with your pickup to take a look at the gravel or visit the cattle, that's okay. You'll probably be able to negotiate that road just about any time of the year. But as soon as we get anything heavier, that requirement would kick over to, it must be very, very dry conditions, which could be August, September, July, depending on what we get any given year for rain, or frozen ground conditions in January through March. Some additional requirements we put in that suggestion are engineered, not just staff, follow-up inspections. So an engineer paid for by the applicant would check the road before a heavy haul, check the road after a heavy haul, see if there's any need to do any repairs and replacements, and then do the follow-up sign-off on that as well. Also a requirement, given that it could be disturbed or if it gets rutted up partway through, while we don't have a lot of houses down there, there still may be someone who wishes to access their pasture land or use it. So there'd be a requirement or suggested requirement of at least a 14-day notice before a haul commences, which is different than what we usually do. And also the maintenance of barricades or signage indicating that while the haul's underway, the general public shouldn't use that road, kind of like a construction zone. So that is how administration feels that we can manage the issue of dealing with the relatively low volume of gravel to move off the site, but also not leaving us with a road that's worse than what we have today, which is certainly we don't need to add road infrastructure. We don't have to, but we can't actually deteriorate what we do have already in place. That has been reviewed with Mr. McNabb and Mr. Jordoff. In the RFD, you'll find some feedback from a meeting I had with them indicating that there's still an additional request that is not reflected in the staff recommendation before the board to modify some of those conditions that we've put in for that special haul route agreement. What would go to, just trying to jump to the page myself. It is page 13 in your agenda package.
13 in ours, or is it?
13 should be the number on the,
Okay.
and towards the bottom, you see the paragraph that, oh, my mistake.
15.
You need to go to page, yeah, a couple more pages down. Sorry, it's only one page down. It's page 14 in your package. So at the top of the page, you see the conditions to that special haul road agreement that I was referring to. And then right above that, or below that, there's a paragraph that indicates for items number 3, 4, and 5, the applicant has asked that consideration be given for small volumes, small sales, even though at the beginning, we evaluated based on large, big projects. So 20,000 plus tons moving at a time. There may be the occasion where 1 or 2 trucks can be sold off to a farmer, given that there's around 8,000 cubes of material stockpiled on the site ready to go to date. So if MPC is amenable to that, I will point out that we would have to modify the nature of the condition to basically create a kind of a vehicle threshold cutoff for condition points number 3, 4, and 5. So they wouldn't apply for whatever, if it's 5 vehicles, they would only apply if you're doing more than 6 vehicle trips or 6 trips a day.
So the question is if they don't need a road use agreement if they're only using 2, right?
The way we're structuring this is the minute it's bigger than a 1 ton and you go past that 17-0 road, okay, you don't need a road use agreement. And that's the trade-off from a full-on development agreement to build a county standard road. And I do want to emphasize the trade-off component. The rest of the conditions, Mr. Chairman, are I think for the panels, quite standard. We are recommending a 10-year term instead of a 5. Again, it's like a lot of the gravel pits, we don't know how fast gravel will come off, where its final destination is. But that way we do get an opportunity to review it in a timely fashion, given that it was excavated once in 2013 and between that time frame hauled once. We think that 10-year period is reasonable. With that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to field any questions you might have, and I do encourage the applicants to speak as well.
Yeah, Mr. McNabb, do you have anything, if you'd like, come up to the mic, so we're fairly deaf, so. I have one question for you. Are you planning on hauling heavy equipment in to do more excavation? Like, will you ever bring a crusher in, or is that done here?
Yeah, no, we'd have to bring a crusher in to. What I bought the thing for was to, county of painters to supply them to their site.
Which is right on 601, which is a nice close haul. That's why I bought the property.
Okay.
And that's what happened. The only job we did out of there, we produced for them and hauled it to them in the winter. They always stockpile in the winter, so it was January when we hauled it out. Never had any problem, of course, on frozen roads at all, eh? Just had to put once in a while, that road got a little bit icy from the snow. We had to spread a little screening sand down.
Okay.
Base, but other than that, it was good. But that's still my intention, hopefully, to get another project with painters. That's the best place to go with that material. It's
How many trucks, when you did it in the past, did you haul, like at a day? Like, what were you doing a
It's
day?
our own
trucks. I think we had half a dozen trucks, so maybe 2,000 ton in a day. It took us about 2 weeks to do their 20,000.
Okay, so, okay. Any other questions from the board members here? Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
My question is around mud tracking. So I have a concern with what is basically an undeveloped road.
Right.
How do we prevent tracking mud out onto
Yeah,
the gravel for the road that meets our county spec?
right. Yeah, which in the winter time, of course, was really nothing track, it was all frozen. Summertime, we never, we know what kind of shape the road's in, we can't haul on it anyway, so it's totally dry, right?
Sorry, Mr. McNabb, our technical, it's being advertised or live streamed, so people at home need to hear too. So.
Okay. Yeah, so that's mean, wet conditions, we wouldn't be moving any material or traveling that road anyway. So basically, it would be, other than a large project, maybe the odd farmer might want to load, which we would just have to, deliver it under dry conditions. We couldn't do it if it was wet. Eh?
So, go ahead, Mr. Teal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to add a little bit to Councillor Stevens' question. In the Altera report, which was prepared for Mr. McMahon, they assessed the haul route, and one of the options they provided, now they didn't have the benefit of seeing our specific conditions that's listed in the report, but one of the things could be a small gravel apron on the undeveloped portion to allow the mud to drop off on that side before hitting the developed portions of 17-0.
If I may follow up, under the exemption that we're being asked to look at, 5 or less loads, we would be potentially waiving the notification, the inspection, everything along those lines. I find that that's putting an awful lot of trust with no verification whatsoever that we aren't hauling in inclement conditions. We've removed all the double checks and controls at that point. And that's where I want to believe everyone, but that's not reality, unfortunately.
The only thing I guess that I would say to that, I think the physical barrier that this undeveloped road allowance is kind of our double check. I mean, honestly, I'm looking at this road and the pictures that we have. You get a half an inch of rain and I'm thinking it's pretty much goose, you know what? And it's, I mean, I don't know if I'd want to haul my pickup truck down there, let alone a gravel truck with a puck falling behind. I know a good tow truck though.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Mr.
Well, plus also too, I think since 2013, the individuals have showed the stewardship on the road and understanding that it would only be dry hauls or winter hauls. So it's not like we're going into this with eyes closed. Like it is, and if they bugger the road up, they're the ones that have to repair it or run their trucks over it to level it out, the ruts out. So
Yeah.
I assume that same conditions would be in your head anyhow, because
Well, that's, yeah. And when we did that haul, I don't know who we'd talked to, but they requested us to put some gravel on some of the corners. When fixed up, David did a little tour of the road and said maybe gravel this little piece, a few loads. So we did, no problem.
And typically on our road allowances, we don't do any maintenance or repairs anyway, so it's not, the way I see this being different is if you're starting with really nothing, you have nothing to lose. I have a problem when we have a very good quality road and then someone damages it and wrecks it. So, I mean, that's kind of where I'm at. I mean, this back road, if you see the pictures, you're not really working with anything. I won't even call it a sheep trail, it's a goat trail.
probably would work for sheep too, but I guess if we have we had any complaints from any other neighbors from what the applicant is hauled in, that would be the other thing. Like we've got these types of roads all over our county.
Yeah.
And most of the time when you're in an area where there hasn't been a big changeover in land, people respect it very fully for that fact that they're probably the next ones that have to drive on it and drive over those ruts if they create them. So most people stay off them when they're wet. I know, but if we haven't had complaints, that's the other part of that.
Absolutely. Well, this isn't a high traffic road by any means. It's not affecting anybody else. Go ahead, Mr. Gender.
This is a chance for building bridges between yourselves and ourselves and make it over time, it'll point in the direction of where we can continue a good working relationship. Thank you.
We're talking roads, Ernie. Just kidding. Through to Mr. Teal about, you had mentioned on page about 3, 4, 5. What, I'm just not sure. We put that in or they put that in? That guy, their request.
The 1 through 6 is coming from administration. The request is in the paragraph below.
Okay.
So the feedback that they provided is that, well, if we're only taking 2 trucks off to a load for a farmer, for example, that's kind of, do we really need an engineer to check that haul? Do we really need to do the notification, and do we really need to do all the signage? And so their request is that for those very small ones, you still have to have a haul road agreement. Don't get me wrong. And there still would be a follow-up inspection. It just wouldn't be done by a professional engineer, paid for by the applicant.
So, I mean, as one of the board members here, I would be okay with, we've had in the past where our peace officers would drive the road with their camera so that the inspection was done via that camera. Is that still a possibility to do that?
It's still our regular practice.
Okay. Versus having an engineer do it, like, I get where we're coming from administration on a heavier haul. We want to do it have an engineer inspect and do everything. In a case of 2 or 3 loads, phone up our peace officer, arrange for that date and allow them to drive the road. When you're done, drive the road. It protects both sides. Is that something that we can make happen?
Mr. Chair, yes, it would need some modification of the wording. So just by way of top of my head, if the number yet to be determined, if it was something along the lines of a 3-load limit, then number 3 would probably have a lead in for every haul greater than 3 loads, comma, requiring a set of inspections for an engineer. And then number 4 would read for every load with more than 3, a haul with more than 3 loads, requiring written notice to all adjacent landowners, that kind of modification.
Okay.
Are we prepared to go with that today? Or are we thinking do you need a decision today, Mr. McNabb?
No.
Okay, this isn't. So where are we at with that, Mr. Teal? I should say we have to give them
Mr. McNabb can give MPC additional time to make a decision. He would have to sign for probably the 3rd time now, I believe, an extension time of time. But that's Mr. McNabb giving us more time to do our job, not the other way around.
And are you okay with that, Mr. McNabb? Yeah. Unfortunately, we've been burnt a little bit in the past, so we're a little bit gun shy with how we deal with it. And I apologize. That is an absolutely no reflection of, like Mr. Clark said, we've never had any complaints from you guys. You're great operators and we're glad to have you. We just want to make sure that we're protecting, we want to cross all the T's and dot all the I's.
Yep.
Mr. Clark and then Mr. Stevens.
I just have a question on that 10-year term on a permit. What's their safeguards in place? Same thing, not thinking we're gonna have that issue, and I know there's a bunch of studies and stuff that have to be done, but that in turn has burnt us in the past, and I don't totally agree to 10 years blanket without some checks and balances in there.
I think given the number of conditions attached in terms of continuing nature, I'm not sure exactly which item we're trying to have the check and balance. The haul route agreements that are needed for every single haul will take care of that.
It's all, there's the haul routes, but there's also site conditions, there's weed maintenance, there's the keeping the fencing up.
So at any point, if you don't, during, say, let's say year 7, we just decide we're not going to follow through on all those conditions, that can be subject to enforcement and the issuance of a stop order. At any point, if we don't get reporting requirements for the annual report or for the cap levy, even if it's just to confirm that we didn't do any hauls, that too is subject to enforcement under a stop order. If the haul without a haul route agreement, that too is subject to, well, immediate protective services will probably catch you faster than I can write the stop order. So we do have those kind of checks and balances, Mr. Chair.
Just how long of a process for stop work order in a case like that would it be?
It will vary from case to case. So some applicants, upon being alerted that they're about to get one, may correct their behavior immediately. Others, if they wish to use all the appeals and mechanisms and not comply when approached by staff, you could be looking at several months.
And if I could just add to that too, I think what we found in the past, even if the permit has run out, they continue to work past the permit date. So that permit timeline doesn't seem to be making that decision. I know where you're coming from, Mr. Clark, on that, but I mean, these individuals that have been doing that, the permit ran out a year ago and they're still working, we still have to put a stop work order.
It's just if there's anything we can do to shorten that time frame, Mr. Teal, I wish could be written in on every contract we do such as this, our permit, not pointing back on this one itself.
And nothing to reflect on you, Mr. Maydadam. I apologize that you're getting kind of, you get painted with the same brush across the board, and it's not, absolutely. So, go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
Through to Craig Teal. Just a clarification on the notification. So any hauls, no matter what the size, we would get notified, but it isn't until they reach that threshold of 5 or more that the landowners get notified. Is that how it's worded?
That is a correct interpretation of what.
Okay.
And Mr. McNabb, does that work for you then in that case?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sure. And I was just wondering, if you do find a market for your gravel, how long do you anticipate the time frame would be to move out 50,000 ton?
What's that again?
How long would it take to move it out? Is this going to be over many years, or do you think within a year?
Yeah, we have roughly 50,000 ton is what I think is in there. If we can secure painters jobs, well, then it would be every 3 years they take 20. So that'd be our biggest,
Yeah, that gives me a bit of an idea what you had in mind.
Yeah.
A time frame.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect. So, do you, Craig, want to take this back and reword it and bring it back to us? Is that what you're thinking?
Mr. Chair, I think those edits are relatively straightforward if the committee deal with the tape.
Okay, so we're understanding that what we're going to do is the one condition will change, that the 5 year or 5 loads, anything under 5 loads, notify our administration, and they will do a quick survey, and anything over 5 would call for the engineer, the notifying of the neighbors, and what was the other one you had?
Mr. Chair, if the committee even needs to consider a motion, maybe it's something along the lines of administration to rewrite conditions. Those are 3 points. Actually, I'll just grab the condition number 16 to edit the wording and conditions in subclauses 16 B, C, and D to exclude hauls involving 5 or less.
Okay. So is everybody on the board okay with that? So we would have a motion to approve with amended to CD or BCD? BCD to allow for 5 hauls or less going forward. Is that fair enough?
To be exempted from.
To be exempted for under 5 loads. Okay. Do I see the shaking of heads and understanding? Okay, so I'd like to have someone make that motion. Mr. McKay?
We'll make that motion.
So, okay, to accept the application with amendment to BCD for under 5 loads. Does that help you, Marlene? That works for you, Craig? Okay. And the board is understanding what we're voting on? I will call the question. All those in favor? So there you go. You don't have to give us permission. You can just fill the conditions and you're ready to go. Okay. You don't have to come back. So thank you for your patience with us.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Next up, 6.2. Who's taking this one? Okay. Mr. Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
29. 26.
29, you're right. Just take that.
The applicant is proposing to place a 2005 manufactured home in southeast of 10, 4118 west of the 4th. The owner of the property has an approved subdivision on the southwest of 10, 4118 west of the 4th. See Appendix A. However, that subdivision has not been finalized since the time of this application. The applicant for this permit is proposing to place a manufactured home on the newly created parcel. The proposed location of the manufactured home exceeds all minimum setback requirements of the agricultural district within the boundaries of the proposed parcel. The location of the open discharge location also meets the setback requirements within the proposed parcel boundaries. A condition of subdivision was that the existing approach was to be constructed to county standards and that the ditch be cleared to create a clear sight triangle for the approach. These conditions will also be added to this application, so that in the event the subdivision is not completed, the county's interest in these issues will still be addressed. In the event the subdivision is not completed, the proposed development is still a discretionary use in the agricultural district, and it will still meet all the setback requirements. Water will be provided by an existing well on the property.
Lost your place.
My picture over some of my text there. And the proposed wastewater is an open discharge system. So we added the conditions in and added some pictures in there. This is the proposed home that they're proposing to put there. And again, the reason that this came to MPC is because of the year of the manufactured home. So that's my presentation.
Any questions and concern from our board members? Mr. Paul McKay.
I don't have a problem with the condition of the trailer and the year because it looks fine and dandy, but I am to believe that this trailer's already been moved onto this acreage, so it brings in a different standard here. So I just wanted to point that out to the board.
Okay. Lakota, you want to grab the mic? Did you move the trailer on already?
No.
Oh, okay. Did you fix the approach?
They're putting gravel on it.
Okay.
I think that was, Lee said was the only requirement was to put gravel on it.
Okay.
Is my understanding?
I thought it was to build a wider approach.
There has to be a culvert installed. I don't have the condition list in front of me.
There is a culvert there.
So Public Works was out and did an inspection between when I issued this, when I wrote this application. So they do have the checklist. It has been given to the landowner. So we do have a checklist of requirements that will be added. And whether the subdivision goes through or not, for this development, that condition will be added to the permit. So whether they do the subdivision or not, the approach will be upgraded at their cost and no cost to the county. As far as the tree removal and the grubbing, that's actually county. They've signed the waiver for it, so it'll be county forces that go do it because they are in road allowance there. So.
Okay. And who owns the remainder of the land?
Edgeview Farms.
And how are they tied with you?
They're my husband's boss.
Okay.
And they're my cousins.
Okay. Okay. So, I mean, ultimately, they're connected. It's not like it's a sale of property or such. It's at arm's length. So, I don't have a problem. I don't know where everybody else is on this. I need a motion to make it go forward, though, if we like to stay here all afternoon or go home. I've got some things. Mr. McKay.
I'll make the motion that we do accept it.
Okay.
With the conditions.
Okay. Mr. Stevens.
My question is there a reason why we're looking at the development permit before the subdivision application? Is there?
In April of this year, the subdivision. In April.
Okay, well, Mr. Fitzgerald to fill us in.
The subdivision has been approved. They applied for it. It was approved. Checked all the check boxes off for it to be finalized and registered at land titles. They are working towards it. There was a bit of confusion, I think, between the surveyor, and that kind of held it up a little bit. So they are working towards it, and I expect that it's going to be registered and finalized in the next,
No, okay.
in the next little bit, but, and the reason that we could proceed with this application without the subdivision, because even if the quarter section stays a full quarter section, this proposed development still meets all the requirements, all the setbacks. So worst case scenario, instead of being on a 12-acre parcel, it'll be on the full quarter section.
That's why I asked the question, who owned the quarter? Mr. Clark.
I guess just with the place being moved already, et cetera, we've had issues with this in the past too. And once again, not to say it's happening every case, but we need to ensure that the rest of those conditions are met, because it makes it very difficult once we've approved the permit to do it after if they haven't did what was required. So
Unfortunately, that is where we're at. We go down the stop work order and it costs us a lot of money, and that's why the discussion normally wouldn't even be a discussion. It's the fact that we've had both cases today. We've had bad actors previously, so we are very, once burned, twice shy, right? So that's where we're at on this. I totally understand where the board's coming from on this as far as that situation.
Yeah, everything just kind of happened within a matter of weeks, and yeah, found the perfect trailer and had to get in before winter kind of thing.
I totally understand that. We have a motion on the floor. Is there any other questions that I have? Any concerns? Mr. Grover, you're holding your hand in voting? Okay.
Anytime we can put young people back in this county, we should do it.
The little girl who's excited to run.
There you go. All those in favor? And any of you opposed? No. There you go.
Well, thank you very much.
Just make sure and fill all those conditions,
Yes,
please.
we are working on them.
Okay. Subdivision files, I see none. We can talk about it.
she can put those in her pockets, that's all.
Absolutely. That's energy for running.
No problem.
Thank you. Okay. No new business, no old business. Do we have a little bit in camera?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
All right, so can I have one of the members take us into camera? Mr. David Grover.
In camera, please.
All those in favor and none opposed? We'll Mr. Stolberg?
Adjourn.